Hello viewers, welcome once again to a new episode of Mendelian Genetics, which is a part of our series on genetics. Today we wish to deliberate on Mendel's second law. Having talked of Mendel's first law, I may just hurriedly recapitulate the principle of segregation given by Mendel, which later was formulated in the form of Mendel's first law, which states that two members of a gene pair, or let us say the alleles, they would segregate or separate from each other in the formation of gametes. Now, this would certainly mean that half of the gametes would carry one allele and the other half would be carried by the other gamete. So, that means the two alleles, they would separate or they would separate. As one can see on the screens, the monohybrid cross would result in three genotypes, namely the homozygous dominant, the homozygous recessive on both the ends, and of course the heterozygous in the middle, and their proportions would be different because the phenotypes would be only two. As we had discussed on the last turn, we call them as classes. So, that means there would be two phenotypic classes of yellow and green, and on the other hand there would be three genotypic classes, that is one pure dominant, pure recessive and hybrid. So, there would be three genotypic classes. Just to revise, on the basis of the fork line, we say that this 3/4 yellow actually consists of 1/4 pure breeding yellow, which means capital Y and capital Y, and 2/4, that is half, are hybrid or the so called impure yellow, that is capital Y and small y, and the remaining 1/4 would be just pure breeding green, which means small y and small y. This much was the aspect of the monohybrid cross. And recapitulating the test cross of a monohybrid, if you remember, we had taken a note of the back cross as well as the test cross, and the test cross was between a suspected heterozygous and the recessive parent. Why I mentioned suspected? Because had it been absolutely pure, then it would have been a back cross and the result would have been all tall. Now, if we wish to know whether the parent in question is heterozygous or not, then we revert to a test cross, and the test cross ratio is 1:1. So, that means in case of a test cross of a monohybrid, the genotypic and the phenotypic ratios are the same, that is 1:1. If you remember, I had used the popular phrase that all test crosses are back crosses, but all back crosses need not be the test crosses. So, that means the rationale for performing the back cross was to insert or to revert to the elite genotypes. The pattern was very clearly emerging in Mendel's mind when he reached the conclusions of the principle of segregation. Now, the next idea that he had was that if there is such a clear cut pattern, why not take now two pairs of contrasting characters? That means, let us see if two characters are taken simultaneously, do the alleles for these traits separate independently, or there is a confusion between them? Is the segregation random? Mendel was very lucky, as I told you before in the episodes for the history, that all the 7 characters that he took were pure breeding and they did not show any linkage. So, when we talk in details about linkage, we will have a greater discussion on this particular aspect. So, The dihybrid cross, he say for example took two characters, that is the seed character, that is the seed texture and the seed color. So, it is known that the round seeds, they dominate over wrinkled ones, and the yellow seeds, they dominate over green ones. Now, we have recent molecular evidence which also points towards as to why the seeds are wrinkled. Maybe it is a story of the transposons. We would like to discuss that under the separate topic of molecular approaches to classical Mendelism. So, in this case, we have now a dihybrid cross, where the parent generation is represented by capital R and capital Y, and likewise the contrasting small r and small y. And the gametes naturally in this case would be capital R Y and the small r y on the other hand. We have to be very careful how to formulate the gametes, which will come by and by. The first generation, the first filial generation, we find that all of the progeny, they reveal round as well as yellow seeds, which clearly means that the principle of dominance prevails. However, as I said earlier, principle of dominance is no law. It was just an idea to begin with. Now, the gametes which are to be formed in this case are, as you can see on your screens, you take one of the R's, combine it with capital Y, then you take this R and combine with the smaller y, then you leave it and take the smaller r and combine with capital Y, and then finally the small r with small y. So, that means 4 different types of gametes. What is the rationale behind 4? We would see in no time. And then we go to the Punnett square. So, that means 4 gametes are there from each parent. One would have 4 into 4, which is 16 combinations in the second filial generation. And what we find in the checkerboard is that there are 4 types of phenotypes. That means one type of phenotype is showing, which is highest in number, that is 9. The seeds are round and yellow. 3 are round as well as green. So, the first indication came that roundness of a seed need not always remain with the yellowness, as was the case with the parents. So, the roundness could go with green, and likewise the wrinkled could go with yellow. So, the phenotypic ratio of F2 of a dihybrid seems to be 9:3:3:1, which is again a very interesting relationship with the monohybrid cross 3:1, which we would see subsequently. Now, this particular dihybrid cross, if we look in some more details, we would find that the seed shape, or in this case as we took as R and small r, and likewise the seed color as yellow and small yellow being the green, and the cross between the generations, the F1 generation, where all the progeny were having round seeds and yellow seeds, we find that these 4 types of gametes are there. If you were careful in looking at the earlier slide, there the sequence of these gametes was perhaps slightly different. What we are going to take into account is that we are going to take the sequence of the gametes of both the parents in exactly the same sequence. And if we do so, then the story emerges, which you will find to be very interesting, that a definite predictable pattern emerges. And this predictable pattern emerges in the sense that the story behind 9:3:3:1 is the same. But then if you just look at it very carefully, we find that 9 of the combinations, or the 9 of the progeny which are round and yellow, would have at least one capital R and one capital Y. And these are the 9 different combinations. the three combinations which are of the other types, that is the round and they are the round as well as green, they are different. They would have at least one capital R. Likewise, the wrinkled and green would be 1, in the sense that you will have just one of these combinations. So that means these ratios are beautifully placed to denote a particular pattern. Let us look at it once again to understand what we really want to drive home. The idea is that when we take the pure round seeds, now this is with a different notation, what we are trying to conclude is that there is a random assortment. By random assortment, we mean that R could go with small g, and capital G would not always remain with capital R, it could come with small r, and vice versa. So that means the different gametic genotypes would be obtained in equal proportions. We could even prove this point by taking into account the genotype frequencies of the gametes by the famous Folkline method, which suggests that if you have a heterogeneous parent which has the capital R, small r, capital G and small g, that means it is round and green, all right. So it is according to the principle of dominance. Now in this case, the 50% of the capital R would combine with half of G, giving rise to 1 into 2 multiplied by 1 into 2, likewise to give rise to 1 by 4, the frequency. And similarly with small g, it has equal chances. So that means 1 by 4. And likewise, the smaller r could combine, say, 50% chances with capital G and the remaining 50% with smaller g to give rise to 1 by 4 of the other combinations. So this is how we calculate the genotype frequency of the gametes. So when these processes were going on, you would then see, as I said, on the basis of the checkerboard, what are going to be the 9 out of 16. The 9 out of 16 are going to be the combinations which would have at least one capital R and at least one capital G. When I say at least, that means it could even have 2. The round and green would have at least one capital R, but no capital G. So this would constitute only 3 by 16, because the combinations with capital R were 3 by 4 and the combinations of small g in the checkerboard were also just 1 by 4. So likewise, we can calculate the 9:3:3:1 ratio beautifully on the basis of the Folkline method. So that means Mendel was of the opinion that actually the combination in the F2 generation has to be absolutely random. When the idea of random assortment comes, then let us take one more example to highlight the point, because with seeds we had one cross. Let us see what happens with the characters of flower color and the height of the plant. If we take flower color into consideration, then purple seems to be the dominant one, which is represented by capital P, whereas it is dominant to small p. You remember I said that in the parlance of genetics, we never say dominant upon, because this is not common English. It is the genetic parlance. We always say that capital P is dominant to small p, and likewise small p is recessive to capital P. So anyway, so stem length again can be represented by, say, short recessive character, which is small t, and capital T, which is dominant. What would happen to the cross between the purple and the white flowers? We would find that when the pure parents that is tall and purple, are crossed with short and white, you would find a very simple way. You just take one of them, one capital T and capital P from one parent, and one small t and small p from the other parent, and make a board and cross them. So that means all of them should represent capital T, small t, capital P and small p, which is according to the principle of dominance, all tall with all purple flowers. This would mean that if the F1 generation was allowed to self-pollinate, now again Mendel observed 4 phenotypes. These are the gametes which are given on the left hand side, and when they are crossed, they also give a combination of tall purple 9, tall white 3, and short and purple and short and white. So that means if one looks very carefully, the double homozygous combinations are just 2. Capital T, capital T, capital P and capital P, they are there is one which is a double dominant homozygous, and on the extreme right below is small t, small t, small p, which is the combination. So that means 2 by 16, or let us say 1 by 8 is the proportion for the absolutely pure ones. So to conclude, the dihybrid ratio of F2 is 9:3:3:1, and 9 by 16 both dominant traits, as I said before, and only 1 by 16, which was in the right hand corner below, was both the recessive traits. So based on all these observations, Mendel postulated his ideas of independent assortment, which stated that during gamete formation, the segregating pairs of unit pairs, they are assort independently of each other, and the segregation of any pair of such units, because he used the term factors, will occur independently of all others. So that means when there is random segregation, each of the gamete has to receive at least one member of every pair of these unit factors. So that means the occurrence or the presence of one unit factors by no means influences the outcome of segregation of the other pair. If we wish to rephrase the whole idea, we would say that the segregation of the two different factors in the gametes and in the subsequent generations seems to be independent of each other without any interference. So Karl Correns now formulated the second law, which is popularly called as the law of independent assortment, on the basis of Mendel's principles, and that it stated that during gamete formation, the segregation of alleles for genes at or on different chromosomes, they segregate independently of each other. One thing which very interestingly emerged from Mendel's views was that he recognized, that is Mendel recognized, that this dihybrid cross was in fact a combination of two monohybrid crosses, because the height was also giving 3:1 and so was the color. So that there was some relationship, and as you know, we had discussed earlier that Mendel had a very good knowledge of mathematics. That's why he scored where others did not do well in statistics, and he was very much familiar with the binomial. If you look at the monohybrid cross, it still goes as the a square plus 2ab plus b square. So that means he immediately came to a conclusion that there was some relationship between the mono and the dihybrid one. And in the modern context, if we try to take this dihybrid cross and break it into two individual monohybrid crosses, what we see is that the expected proportions for the first character, which is the seed shape, also comes to 3:1, and so does the expected proportion for the second character, which is the color. So that means the expected ratio is in fact a product of a mono as well as monohybrid. Just look at a comparison between the mono and the dihybrid crosses. What we find is that there is only one homozygous situation and the two are heterozygous. So that means if there are tall and one short, that means there are only four combinations in monohybrid. They happen to be 16. The yellow round are 9 as compared to the tall, which are 3. So there seems to be a relationship between 4 and 16. There seems to be yet another relationship between 3 and 9. The number of phenotypic classes in monohybrid are 2 and the number is 4, again indicating towards some relationship, and of course the genotypic classes having 3 and 9 in the mono and the dihybrid crosses respectively. Coming to the test cross of a dihybrid, it was also found that the genotypic ratio was also identical to the phenotypic ratio. This was a monohybrid cross, but then coming to the dihybrid cross, it was again the same, but the pattern was 1:1:1:1:1, which means yellow round, yellow wrinkled, green round and green wrinkled, all of them would occur in equal proportions if the F1 was crossed with a double recessive parent. Again a relationship. Just look at this diagram once again to reach a plausible conclusion where some maths can be applied. In this dihybrid cross having tall and round, for example, when we make a checkerboard of the F2, it really goes like a swan song, and that is, you have the first triangle, a large triangle. Mind you, this triangle would be got only when the gametes are placed in the right sequence. If you just disturb the sequence, then the triangle cannot be got. And so that means if the TR has to be here, the TR has to be here also, and both the capital alleles first and then both the small alleles later. So this larger triangle again tells us about 9 of the tall and round. Then the smaller triangle tells us about tall and wrinkled. There is yet another smaller triangle which tells us about the wrinkled as well as small t and the capital R, which would indicate that it is also green and round, and likewise just one which is there for the double recessive, which is the green as well as wrinkled. So that means these triangles are absolutely in sequence. Just to conclude, the dihybrid cross is nothing but a product of mono as well as mono. So that means we cannot have a square for proportions. So we take it as 3 plus 1 whole square, it comes to be 3991. Likewise, the genotypic ratio is 1:2:2:4:1:2:1:2:1, which is a product of 1:2:1. Just one final observation. There are 4 phenotypic classes, 4 genotypic classes here, and you will find here the idea is of 9. The genotypic classes in a monohybrid were 3, and we found that there were 4 phenotypes. Here we have 9 genotypes and we have the 3 genotypes in monohybrid. The test cross ratio again is a square of 1:1, which is the monohybrid, which is 4 times 1. So the basic idea is to give you certain formulae, which we would have a separate pair of sessions for the formulae as well as certain proper numericals, which will give a student a confidence to solve any of the Mendelian problems. Thank you.